Between 1572 and 1574, the village of Dole in France became a brutal killing field. Children were torn apart, half-eaten, their remains scattered through the underbrush like offerings to something no longer human. A monster was stalking the forests, not as a man, but as a beast. He claimed a spirit had given him an ointment to become a wolf, and he fed on children to survive. Drawn from 16th century trial records, eyewitness accounts, and a Europe drowning in famine, fear, and superstition. This is one of the first werewolves ever tried and executed in recorded history. This is the true story of the hermit werewolf of Dole.
He lived on the edge of everything: the forest, the village, the world. Gilles Garnier was a loner, not the romantic kind either. He was the kind of man who made people cross the road without realizing why. He lived deep in the woods outside Dole, France. Just him, his wife, and the silence. No one really knew what he did to survive. He didn't work in the fields. He didn't trade in the market. Some said he hunted. Others said he scrounged. All anyone knew was that he kept to himself, and the forest kept him. Back then, this was the 1570s. Dole was ruled by the Holy Roman Empire, but laws meant nothing when your stomach was empty. The region was choked by famine. People were starving, and when people are starving, stories grow teeth. Wolves roamed the hills. So did whispers of witches, demons, and worse. Everyone was looking for someone to blame. And Garnier? He made it easy. He smelled like rot and old clothes. He mumbled to himself when he walked through town. He stared too long. He blinked too little. He didn't look like a man who needed much, which made people wonder where he was getting what he needed. So when the children started disappearing, when their bodies were found mangled and half devoured, they didn't ask questions for long, because Gilles Garnier had already answered them just by existing. In 1572, it started. A 10-year-old girl vanished while walking home from a neighboring village. Days later, hunters found her mutilated body. Parts of her flesh were stripped clean, her bones cracked open. Not long after, a boy disappeared, then another child. In total, at least 4 children were found dead, torn apart like animals. Some were partially eaten. Witnesses spoke of a large wolf that struck and vanished like smoke. But here's where it gets horrifying. People didn't just report a wolf. Some said they saw a half-man, half-beast stalking the woods. Others swore it was Gilles Garnier himself, with blood around his mouth and something inhuman in his eyes. One man claimed he saw Garnier crouched over a body, eating. The rumors spread fast. He wasn't a man. He was a werewolf. And in a place where belief in demons and witches was as common as the rain, that kind of fear, it turned into action. In late 1573, Garnier was arrested. He was caught near the site of an attack. They dragged him to Dole, put him in chains, and began the trial. But this wasn't just a court of law. This was ecclesiastical and civil judgment combined. That meant torture was allowed and used. And his confession. Garnier said a spirit came to him in the woods. It offered him an ointment, one that would help him hunt better. When he rubbed it on his skin, he transformed into a wolf. In that form, he claimed, he was faster, stronger, and hungrier. He admitted to killing children, eating their flesh, and even bringing parts home to feed his wife. That part? The investigators found bones and remains near his hut. Even if he wasn't a werewolf, he was definitely something. Here's the real nightmare. Was Garnier truly a supernatural killer, or just a starving, mentally broken man, scapegoated by a terrified town? Remember, this was the middle of a famine. Mental health didn't exist as a concept back then. Schizophrenia, delusions, no one knew what that was. Garnier could have been desperate, unable to survive, spiraling into madness. Or he was tortured until he said what they wanted to hear. So who's the real monster? Him or the people who burned him? On January 18th, 1574, Gilles Garnier was found guilty of lycanthropy, witchcraft, murder, cannibalism. The sentence: burned alive at the stake. His screams echoed through Dole. Some swore they saw a wolf's shape in the flames. Others just watched, glad the nightmare was over. Today, historians debate what really happened. Was Garnier just mentally ill? Was he a serial killer who used the werewolf myth to explain his urges? Or was he an innocent scapegoat, condemned by superstition? Some psychologists say Garnier may have had clinical lycanthropy, a rare mental disorder where a person believes they can turn into an animal. Others say this was just mass hysteria, a hungry town, a scary man, and the devil to blame. But what's terrifying is this. Even today, nobody knows for sure. Gilles Garnier's story is a chilling mix of horror, history, and human fear. It reminds us that sometimes monsters aren't born. They're made by hunger, by fear, and by people desperate for someone to blame. And whether he was a werewolf, a killer, or just a madman lost to the woods, his story still haunts the forest trails of Dole.